Okay, let's get started. If they're not here for today, that's okay. They'll receive a copy of the meeting in a recording as well. All right, let's get started here. Um, okay, so those that couldn't make it are going to get a recording of this. And we're looking for, as I said, we're going to be talking about the strategy of rental cash damming. Okay. So this will be a little mini course on how to use cash flows from rental property to make your principal residence more tax efficient. All right. So we're going to be talking about why this strategy is more relevant today, given higher interest rates, rising costs of home ownership, and that this is that inflation is currently outpacing our income. So this is a problem that's affecting a lot of Canadians today. And we have a strategy that can definitely help. A little bit about me. So my company is called Brilliant Investor. My focus is exclusively on landlords and real estate investors. So I work with Mortgage Outlet, is the brokerage. We're located in the GTA. We service all of Canada, though. Okay, so here's the powerful idea. Okay, your mortgage often is considered, for most people, a liability. It's actually an asset. And when you structure correctly for tax benefits, it can be a financial lever to help you get ahead. So that'll enable you to make a meaningful headway on your path to financial freedom. Okay. So really quickly, who is this strategy for? I mean, if you're listening to this presentation, you're probably like most Canadian homeowners. You have a mortgage on your principal residence. You're paying it off with after-tax dollars. So who is this for? Okay. Anyone with a rental suite within their home, anyone who owns a primary residence and has at least one rental property. If you also want to buy a rental property, this strategy can be very helpful. Anyone who's currently, even in fact, in a negative cash flow scenario for your rental property. So we're going to show you how to structure this mortgage in a way that helps you be more tax efficient so that you can grow your real estate portfolio, keep more of your money along the way. So we're going to show you how to use those savings to earn tax refunds, reduce your mortgage balance, pay less interest overall, and become mortgage free years ahead of schedule. So paying off your mortgage sooner on your primary residence, you free up expensive mortgage payments, and that could give you more room for more important things such as improving your lifestyle, buying more real estate, possibly getting a jump on retirement. I want to point this out. It's very important. With this strategy, we are not asking for additional cash inputs from you. Okay, this strategy doesn't require you to do that. We're simply going to be reorganizing cash flows and payments that you already have in a way that's more tax efficient, and it benefits come in form of tax refunds, interest savings when you see those refunds to help you pay your mortgage off faster. Okay, so what is rental cash damming? Rental cash damming is the technical term coined by the Canada Revenue Agency. It's the process of segregating non-deductible and deductible cash flows so that you can accurately and safely claim those tax deductions on your mortgage debt. Okay. What is the true cost of your mortgage? When you look at the entire life of a mortgage, most people already know the true cost of mortgage is almost double because of the interest that you're paying over time. Very few people are taking into account how much earned income it takes to pay that off. So here's an example of $500,000 mortgage actually costs $912,000 at 4.5%. because of the interest that you're paying over that period. So here's an example, okay? Let's just go back in time. We buy a home for $750,000. Today it's worth $1 million. We put down $150,000, 20% of 750, we borrow the rest, the 600,000, okay? The payments on the mortgage we make are after-tax dollars, where we need to earn an additional 30, 40% of income in order to pay the government. So despite eating up a major chunk of our disposable cash, we have made payments on time. We're even making some progress, let's say, paying down the mortgage. So today, we owe only $500,000. The value's gone up to $1 million from $750,000. So now we have a net equity of $500,000, okay? When we bought the home, we felt like we were in good shape financially. We could also afford to put away some savings each month, which again, we funded with after our own cash, which is after-tax dollars. So unfortunately, along the way, interest rates moved up on us, right? Our interest payments increased, life in general got a little more expensive, to the point where we had to make some concessions in order to maintain our lifestyle and stay in our home. Okay, so, we sacrificed a small amount we're putting aside for investments, and then saying to ourselves, once we get things under control, we'll get those investments going again. So if we look at the wealthy person, they can afford maybe to pay cash for that house. They put down $750,000, they buy it outright, but instead of leaving the funds in the property as debt equity, they borrow back $600,000, and they use those funds to buy 3 more properties in the same price range. So $600,000 is enough to cover $350,000 down payments and closing costs. So initially, these rentals, they just barely cash flow. The rent essentially covered the operating costs of the property, which meant that they weren't making a ton of money, but they weren't out of pocket either. So dollar for dollar, the wealthy person and the homeowner are essentially both servicing the same debt, right? They both borrowed $600,000, except the 100% of the interest on the wealthy person's mortgage is tax deductible because they borrowed that money to invest. So that comes to $244,000 less in interest cost, and they're still ahead because they bought those 3 properties. So because you borrow with the intent of generating an income, you can deduct the carrying cost in that loan. I think we know. But keep in mind, it has to be a rental. It can't be for personal use. So this doesn't work for second homes or vacation properties that we don't rent out. It works when we're generating income from the property, right? So must be a rental, can't be second vacation. So for the purpose of this course, I'm going to stay focused specifically on rental cash damming for homeowners, which own at least one additional rental property to their primary residence. So we understand how the strategy works. Let's dive a little deeper into the numbers. We get a sense of how powerful it really can be and the financial benefits a typical homeowner might expect over the life of this mortgage. So let's consider a typical scenario. For a homeowner with a $500,000 mortgage and a primary residence valued at $800,000, the first point to note is this only works when you have at least 20% equity in your home. The reason for this is you need a multi-component mortgage, a mortgage with a home equity line of credit attached to it, so we can run the strategy, and it's only available for those that have at least 80% of the value, 80% loan to value. So we need to have a bit of equity to get started. If we're not there yet, okay, we've got other strategies we can work on together in the meantime to get you to a point where you can start to implement a more advanced financial technique like this. So we've got 20%. Since their home is worth $800,000, the homeowner is technically able to set up this structure, right? So $800,000, the credit limit is $640,000. They owe $500,000 of that on a mortgage, and which leaves $140,000 to take out to be accessed for the down payment on a purchase of a rental property. Okay, that's how we can do it. So This gives them the ability to purchase a rental property worth approximately $500,000. So they use $125,000 down payment, plus they have a small buffer left over for closing costs. Okay. So keep in mind, you don't need to purchase a rental property if you already own one for this to work. We just are going to be reorganizing your cash flows from your existing portfolio to put this strategy to work right away without buying anything additional. I want to make that clear. Okay. So how do we structure? So let's dive into the mortgage structure. We can then we can dive into the numbers. So for the strategy to work, we have to set up a multi-component mortgage, I think I mentioned, on the principal residence that has a home equity line of credit attached to it. So many of these products are out there. Many of them are available from different banks, lenders today. However, in reality, many of them lack some of the features required to run the monthly cash flow cycle. I hate to say, but RBC, which has their Homeline product, is one of those lenders that this process doesn't work for. And there's very important reasons why. So one very important reason why is that you have to have what's called an auto readvance. So this is a feature on the home equity line of credit, which means that as the principal gets paid down on the non-deductible mortgage, your primary residence, it then automatically becomes available to be withdrawn from the investment line of credit. So the funds are able to be withdrawn in a timely manner, okay? So if the structure doesn't have that readvanceable feature, it's gonna cause some friction and there's gonna be implementation issues. So this may seem a bit complicated, but where our team comes in, we work closely with you to make sure you have the right structure. We hold your hand to get the cash flows going while you implement the strategy. So the ultimate goal here is to pay down the non-deductible bad debt as quick as possible. And then what we do is we apply the rental income as a prepayment, the rental income from your rental as a prepayment on your primary mortgage each month. Then we're going to reborrow that same amount from your investment line of credit to service the rental property expenses. So each month we convert more and more of your mortgage over to the investment line, as you can see here, which results in increased tax refunds because you can use to pay down that mortgage even faster and accelerate that wealth benefit. Okay. So here's how it works, okay? We make a regular mortgage payment each month to the principal residence. Our payments are set from our household bank account, same as before, nothing changes. Then we have a rental property. That rental income on the left side, that's the money we get from the tenant, and the rental expenses on the right, okay? That is the money which includes things like principal and interest payments, property taxes, condo fees, etc. The first thing that happens in the cash flow cycle, okay, the tenant pays the rent on the first of the month. We get a check with e-transfer, however we collect it. Most Canadians, what they do is they deposit that income in the bank, likely an account dedicated for that rental, and they pay the expenses on the property from that same account, which is fair because we've all been taught to do it that way, keeping our rental cash flows separate from our personal cash flows. But when we do it this way, what we do is we miss a wonderful opportunity to create additional tax efficiency for ourselves. So because there's actually no rule that says you need to use the rental income to pay your rental expenses, when we receive the income from the tenant, it's ours. We can do whatever we want with it. So this takes a minute to get comfortable because the natural tendency, I think, is to use that rental income to pay the rental expenses. That just makes sense. But there's a better way to manage that cash flow. So what we're going to do is, okay, we're going to use that rental income to pay off our non-deductible mortgage. Because we don't get any tax benefits for carrying out mortgage, bad debt, so let's get rid of it quicker. The first step is we make a regular mortgage payment, okay, into our account, same as before, make an additional prepayment equal to the value of our monthly rent. So the principal portion of that regular payment plus the full value of the prepayment goes to pay down our mortgage balance. And the equity immediately becomes available in the investment line of credit, which we then draw back to cover the rental expenses and run our landlord business. That's it. Every single month, we use the same rental income to prepay our mortgage and borrow the funds to cover the rental expenses. And that's cash damming. Very straightforward. Okay. So quick case study. Anyone who owns their primary residence has one rental property. They want to buy a rental property, even if you're negative cash flow. Let's just talk about those scenarios. Okay. So the first one, in this scenario, the homeowner has a $500,000 mortgage on their principal residence. They're on a 30-year amortization at a 5.45% rate. Again, the rate today is better, but let's say, just for the numbers' sake, they're paying $2,804 a month. Okay. The marginal tax bracket that they're in is 40%, which means that any debt they convert to a tax-deductible investment loan, they'll end up getting 40% of the interest back at tax time. So the rental property is worth $500,000. It's got a mortgage on it of a balance of $375,000. So that means that there's $125,000 in equity. The total annual cost to run the property is just over $33,000. Okay. Mortgage payment, the maintenance, the property tax, your expenses are $33,000 a year to run the property. So these expenses these expenses include the mortgage payment. Okay, so the mortgage payment, the maintenance, and the property tax is $33,000. Okay, so let's take a look at the cash flow cycle again, because this time the numbers from the case study. All right, we got the principal residence in the center. We're going to be making regular payments of $2,804 monthly. The payment comes from the homeowner's regular household bank account, same as it does, no change. Up above, we've got the rental property, the income on the left, and expenses on the right. Okay. We just received $33,000 in rental income annually on the property. That's $2,753 each month. We remember we can use that to prepay the mortgage and drive the non-deductible debt down. So the equity becomes available in the investment line of credit, and that we draw that back out into the rental checking account. What we like to call the rental clearing account is how we like to, and from there we use the funds to make all the payments on the rental property. So this cycle, every month we get our rental income, we run it through the primary residence mortgage, we convert the bad debt into good debt, and we draw the funds out to pay the rental expenses. All right, so here are the financial benefits for doing that. The first thing is we look at how long it takes to convert the full balance of your mortgage over to the investment line. So we call this the debt conversion date. And depending on how many properties you have, this can typically take between 6 and 12 years to complete in its first phase. Okay. In this case, the debt conversion is achieved in year 9. So this doesn't mean the mortgage is paid off. I want to make that clear. It means we've reached the point where the debt is now completely tax deductible and we're receiving our maximum annual tax refunds. All right. The next thing we talk about is the total value of the refunds we've earned in the plan. So this assumes that, the rate of interest is constant and the marginal tax rate doesn't change either. In the reality, these things can fluctuate, but this gives us a sense of the total amount of tax refunds we can expect to achieve using this strategy. So in this case, the homeowner would receive $117,000 in refunds over the life of the mortgage. So technically, the homeowner can do whatever they want with those refunds, but they can save the money, they can spend it on something else. However, when we do these projections, we like to assume that the homeowner will use the tax refund to then make it an additional prepayment on their mortgage and pay that down even faster. So when we doing that, the combined efforts in this example, the net effect of using these tax refunds, okay, to accelerate the plan is they're able to pay off their mortgage 97 months ahead of schedule, and 97 monthly payments are reduced, which saves them $272,000 in future mortgage payments, right? That's just 97 times a 2753. So in this example, taking into account we make mortgage payments with after-tax earnings, we're going to calculate the level of income required to make those payments. So remember, we had a 40% marginal tax rate. We would need to earn $453,000 to make the 97 payments. That's close to $500,000 of income savings that can go towards more important things like, helping you retire many years ahead of schedule. So technically, the homeowner is mortgage-free 97 payments sooner than they otherwise would be. And in order to make an apples-to-apples comparison here, right, we assume that we're continuing to make payments and we're going to reinvest those 97 payments to the end of their original amortization. Remember, we had 30 years originally. So they can earn a rate of return on the future savings. So this calculator allows us to play with different growth rate assumptions. And for this scenario, we're going to be using a 6% growth rate. So this results in the future value of those invested payment savings. Remember, those payment savings of $272,000 at 6% over the remaining, the remaining time that's left on the mortgage. If we assume we were doing it at the same time, you would end up with a benefit of $348,000. Okay. We also calculate that the future value of that rental property in that original amortization of 30 years would have been worth $1.2 million. Okay. All right. So this is if we have an existing rental. Remember, okay, we've paid down the line of credit, we've paid down the rental, and our net wealth improvement is $348,969. Okay, so scenario 2, the same rental property, but with negative cash flow. So you might recall the rental expenses on this property are $2,753 monthly. For this scenario, we're assuming the rental income is $2,300, which means there's a monthly shortfall of $453. So one thing worth mentioning, our calculator allows us to make assumptions for cash flow appreciation. Rents never really stay static forever. The value of the rent you earn, as well as the expenses on the property, they tend to grow over time, right? So we don't need to get into the weeds on this, but our calculator will take these changes into account. So all the scenarios we covered so far are going to include a 1.5% appreciation of the expenses and the rental income, which is very conservative. So, which means that even though the property started out by losing money, over time, it's going to be in positive cash flow. So what's impressive about this is that we're able to purchase a property where the expenses are higher than the income, and still have to make it make sense financially. The structure covers the shortfall of the investment line of credit, which allows us to own the property without making concessions elsewhere in our lives. So earlier in this course, we talked about having to choose between our lifestyle and investing for tomorrow. So with rental cash damming, it's possible to do both. So the debt conversion point is 9.17 years, okay? The tax refunds are $426,000. The growth assumptions are the same, like across what we talked about with the existing rental. So the future rental value is the same. It's no difference, $1.2 million. and the outstanding liabilities. This is where we begin to see a difference, okay? The investment line of credit has a balance remaining of $343,000. And that's because we ran negative cash flow for 15 years, and we drew on the investment line of credit to cover the shortfall along the way. So what is the net wealth improvement? Well, we're comparing the timeline against the original 30-year amortization on the primary residence. At that point in time, we had a rental property worth, remember, $1.2 million. We subtract the balance remaining on the investment line, which is $343,000, and we get $877,000 after paying out the balance on the line. So even with a negative cash flowing property, we can still get ahead. And this rental cash family can cover that shortfall. Now, it can't cover every shortfall, but within a certain parameter, we can run those scenarios with you where it can actually work. So let's just recall what we're trying to accomplish here. We're acquiring an income generating asset that will help us build additional wealth for the future. We're going to structure our principal residence so that we can use the cash flows from our rental property to convert our home mortgage into a tax-deductible investment loan. This is going to allow us to reduce our taxes and keep more of our hard-earned money in our hands and not the government. So this helps us beat inflation, improve our lifestyle over time. And we're going to accomplish this all without any additional cash inputs, remember, beyond our regular mortgage payment. So we're making financial progress without sacrificing lifestyle. So next steps for you, I mean, you can click on this QR code here, okay, to get a custom strategy site, to get to our URL. So we will audit your landlord business, will help you attain financial freedom, save thousands of dollars, increase cash flow, and you can feel confident with and decrease your stress. That's it. This will take you to my calendar. We'll book an appointment, and we can then input your data and run the scenario through the calculator and show you your financial results, just like I've shown here for the example. Thanks. And that is a wrap.